Happy Tuesday, everybody. My name's Andy Elliott. I'm a realtor here in Williamson County, Tennessee. I'm with my best buddy, Rodney Wilds, who is a loan officer with First Bank in Franklin, also in Williamson County. Rodney, what do you know today?
It's our Tuesday. It's time to get the knowledge on.
Get the get the knowledge on. Sorry if the title was a little bit dark. It's home. That
What
wasn't
was it?
my intention. For anybody that's watching, there's going to mix in a little bit of hope, but yeah, the title was a little bit dark going in there. So, anything going on in the world of man? There's a lot of stuff going on these days. If you watch
There's
the
a
news at all.
there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that I try not to pay a lot of attention to. A lot of stuff going on in the mortgage industry. We got AI is becoming more and more sought after. We're looking for ways to use AI in our underwriting and any processes that make it better. So stuff like that. We got there's new technologies that you can use that looks into your income for you and your assets. Like they might be able to, the customer put in their, for example, they put in their passwords to their bank account, and the system automatically logs in, checks their income, sees how their income's going in, verifies income and their assets all on the same piece of paper. So pretty good stuff.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's there was another company recently that had tried to convert a lot of their stuff to AI. A lot of it, I'll think of it. This is just off the cuff. I'll think of it in a minute. But they had converted quite a bit to AI for all those right reasons, and what they're doing is they're having to integrate a few more humans in there just to kind of keep it to guardrails. They're putting up a
Yeah.
little bit of
Oh,
guardrails on it.
yeah, and our company was quick to point out that because we depend on our support staff so much, our processing and underwriting, and AI could help these divisions, but we're definitely not looking to replace them. We're looking to scale with it versus to maybe if it helps us not hire our third underwriter in a year or something, that's what we're
Hmm.
looking for. Any efficiencies, and things like that. So but
Well, and
definitely, it's good. They're doing it at an amazing, accurately rate. There's just a lot of single source validations, what the other stuff's called when we're talking about pay stubs and bank statements. So there's just a lot of cool stuff, and it's been around for a minute, but it's becoming more and more popular.
the one thing I do know about your company is First Bank is big.
It's
They're big.
huge.
I mean, we've got amphitheaters named after your company around here.
Yeah, they're it's a huge bank. I forget how many billions of dollar bank they consider, but yeah. And we just bought another bank too. But around here it's a huge bank.
Yeah, and they do a really good job. So the topic today that I was kind of framing this on, and it's interesting that we just had the Feds just made a determination here, wasn't it? Just a couple of days ago or yesterday, Monday, something like that, and they stayed firm. We'll talk about that in a second. But there was an article that I was reading, and it was kind of interesting, and I apologize if it comes off a little bit dark. But the name of this show is Real Estate Reality Check, and it's not to be. We're not like that housing crash guy. We're not that. But if something's going on and we have evidence to that, um, I'm going to talk about it. Because that's just. I don't want to come across as one of these. I don't want this show to come across. Keep buying because you need to do that. Well, that's up to you individually, and we'll talk about how you get to that point by the time the show ends. So it's not all dark. But this one article is the housing market crisis: why homeownership dreams are fading. And I kind of wanted to go through a couple of this, if that's all right with you, Rodney.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
it says it starts off with, ever feel like the dream of owning your own place is slipping further away, like trying to grab smoke? You're not alone. right now a big cloud of doubt hangs over the housing market, and it's making a lot of folks think twice about taking the plunge into home ownership. To back that up, the prevailing housing market perceptions that's highlighted, the way people see what's happening with house prices, interest rates, and overall economy are significantly dampening home buying intentions. And intentions, I think the way leading indicator for you guys would be applications and such, right? Wouldn't that kind of telegraph what's going to happen?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So fewer people than in recent years believe they'll be able to buy a home anytime soon. And a big reason for that is they simply feel priced out. It goes on to say, it's like this. Imagine you're trying to save up for your favorite toy, but every time you get a little closer to the goal, the price suddenly jumps even higher. It's like today, I find out my HOA is going to be going up $40 a month. I mean, geez, it never ends, But that's how many people feel about buying a house these days. This isn't just about the numbers. It's about, and this is what I thought was important. It's not just about the numbers. It's the fundamental shift in how people view the possibility of building their future in a home of their own. We know that's, Rodney's talked about this for a couple of years now, that planting your flag, buying a house, getting that equity going, equity stake is the way you start to build wealth. That's right, Rodney?
I mean, I always feel like, the housing, one, if you're renting, you're paying 100% interest rate, in my opinion. And two, typically we have only seen a few down markets, which we could be on the cusp of right now. I don't want to jump ahead in the article, but it talks about, we'll talk about that in the article. But yes, that is exactly right. I mean, it's but this is kind of the way it's been, honestly. I feel like that this article is like 2 years late. Maybe not the housing market crisis, or I mean, you could call it a housing market crisis. We've been in one for more than a couple of years, in my opinion, on homeownership's dreams are fading. If anything, they've gotten better over the last couple of years with more availability and things like that. Less hardball negotiation tactics. So I think the article's a little late, but I need to hear it from this viewpoint, from like the individual viewpoint, like it's because people are still struggling with this, and I forget about it. I'm like, I deal with the ones who can afford it, who the 7% rates don't, we're doing closed loans, right? I'm not dealing with the ones that's not buying. So that it kind of leads it to, I like this article from the standpoint of the people who are feeling overpriced and priced out. So
Yeah, I
still,
agree. Yeah, and according to a Gallup poll, less than a third of people who don't currently own a home expect to buy one in the next 5 years. Back between 2013 and 2018, a much larger percentage of renters, over 40%, thought they'd be homeowners within that time frame. Now that number has shrunk considerably. So what's the main culprit behind this shift? And the whole point of this, the reason this caught my interest, and it's because we've been kind of connecting the dots, Rodney and I have, for a couple of years. And the reason isn't because we see news articles or listen to the news. That's not it. It's because we see behind the scenes what's going on. And that's why when I read these articles, I'm comparing what I see, because I have access, just like Rodney does. I have access to Facebook groups and things where it's just real estate agents and specifically like our company, and other Facebook groups that aren't just our company, but just thousands upon thousands of agents. And we have that conversation, and they tell you what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, it's one of the things I'd learned over the years, back when things were going, really tough in 2012. Nobody in our office knew that there was a problem until we called the bullpen. There would be like 10 of us back there. And somebody said, "Hey, is anybody's house taking a little longer to sell than usual?" You start having that conversation. Everybody's like, Yeah, you too. And that's when you know that something's coming up because there's this chatter. I guess you could call it chatter behind the scenes. So, what's the main culprit behind the shift? And it boils down to one big avoidable factor, and that's affordability. That's what Rodney was just saying. The Gallup survey highlights that a whopping 68% of renters say they can't afford to buy a home or don't have enough for a down payment. Which, if it's an FHA loan at 500,000, so what are you, $18,000, something like that for 3.5, like that. When the same question was asked back in 2013, only 45% cited this as the main reason, meaning lack of a down payment or they couldn't afford it. It's not just the price of the house itself, it's the whole package. Saving for a down payment, dealing with higher interest rates or mortgages, and even the general uncertainty about the economy. Bingo, that in my opinion, if people watch the news, how can they not watch the news and when they get done be scared to death? I mean, wouldn't you agree with that? The news is scary, the way that it's framed these days.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. It's crazy. You like I said, try not to get too engrossed in it because you'll get you'll get brought down by it. But you walk outside and you talk to your neighbor. It's like, how's it going? It's like pretty good, everywhere. But the news is going pretty good most of the time. So yeah, it's.
Had a guy tell me that, we were I don't know where we were talking about all the wars and stuff. This is years ago, but the wars and all this stuff that was going on, it was, this isn't the only period in time when there was a lot of strife in the world. I've seen some stuff in my day, and the guy goes, "Yeah, I know that there's a lot of stuff going on, but won't you step out?" We're on the phone. He goes, "Why don't you step outside your front door?" And I was like, "Okay," and I did. And he goes, "How is it out there?" And I said, "It's pretty quiet."
Yeah.
And he said, "That's the truth, as
Yeah.
opposed to you being force fed all the stuff." So, 11%. Okay, so renting it. All right. General uncertainty about the economy, rightfully so. So for many, renting isn't a lifestyle choice. It's the only viable option when homeownership fees feel like a distant dream. I bring up HOAs. A lot of people will be pushed away from living in a townhome like I do. I live in a nice community here. HOAs getting expensive. That pushes some people away. But it's been the same for nearly 10 years. So if I was renting, I would have eclipsed that 5 years ago. So I thought this was kind of an interesting thing. Adding to the affordability woes is the generally negative view people have of the current housing market perceptions. And again, we're talking about perceptions. I mean, look at the stock market the other day. A little bit of good news, what happens? Goes up 1,100 points, A little bad news, trash is 2,000 points. It's just emotions, man. So for a while now, Americans have felt that it's a bad time to buy a house. We know that. There's a certain neighborhood that I'm familiar with, and we're getting ready to do some business down there. And it is flooded with listings. And they've been on the market. I looked it up this morning. It's a place down in Franklin. Rodney will know what I'm talking about. And the average days on market just to get to contract is 60 days. 60
Wow.
days. That didn't used to be the case. It's 55
No.
just to get the contract. Then you get to go through the closing process. That's a minute. But with the level of pessimism that has eased slightly compared to the reality, to the really low points of 23 and 24, it's still significantly worse than the generally positive sentiment we saw before 2028. I want to talk about a sentiment. We're talking about attitudes and sentiments and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to show you something. Here it goes. Oh no, I don't need to do that. Sorry. I did a slide. Watch this. You ready? This is the sentiment. There we go. That's what the sentiment looks. I mean, if the graph go down, people are feeling kind of bad about things. So in 2020, COVID, that was a tough day. 2022, not so good. 2024, it's headed down again. So with all the uncertainty, it's pretty easy to see that why that is. So we're get done
Yeah,
with
that
it.
was
That's not a good sentiment. So think back to the early 2000s. A large majority of people. We're almost done with this article. Think back to the early 2000s. Hi, Angie. How are you doing, young lady? Our California friend is here. We're now complete. Where's the dance music? Think back to the early 2000s.
that's
A
a
large
different
majority. What?
that's a
What?
different show.
Oh, that's right. That's the 10 o'clock version.
Yes.
Think back to the early 2000s. A large majority of people thought it was a good time to buy, even after the housing crash in 2008. The optimism, while shaken, remained above 50% until fairly recently. The sharp drop in positive sentiment coincided with rising inflation, record home values. It's like the air has gone out of the balloon for many prospective buyers. Again, this is a little darker than I would paint things. We're going to go on to why this happened. Interestingly, and this is what I was kind of racing to get towards, sometimes I push my speed because I don't want to dawdle. Dawdle? Whatever. Interestingly, political leanings seem to play a role in how people view the market. Imagine that. Can you imagine that, Rodney?
Yes. Yeah, I can.
Oh, Angie's dancing. I like that. Republicans have become more optimistic about buying a home, likely linked to the broader positive feelings about the economy when their party is in power. There could be truth to that. Democrats and independents remain largely cautious. The difference in perspective highlights how intertwined our views on the economy and the housing market can be with our broader beliefs. And you know what? I don't care who you are. I'm saying for the Democrats and independents, I get it. If you're on the other team, other than we're all Americans in this, that part we can agree on. But if you're on that side of the political aisle, I get it. You have anything to add to that, Rodney, or shall we press on?
No, we can move on. Politics is politics.
Yep. One might think that if fewer people want to buy, house prices would be dropping significantly. Their predictions now, Realtor.com is saying home prices are going to increase in the next year by, get this, drum roll, 0.5%. 0.5% in a year. Now, will that happen? That's what they say this month, right? But
Yeah.
that's fairly close to flat. That's just my opinion. So the majority of people still expect home prices in their local areas to increase over the next year, which they will, and suggest that many don't see a significant drop in prices that would suddenly make homes more affordable. We're going to talk about that in about a second. If the stock market keeps going back up, then people will be more confident again. I agree. Agreed. And to recap, we're talking this whole article, although, and I'll stop apologizing for it, it comes off a little bit dark, but it's really about attitudes of all of us. It's a cumulative attitude. If we're generally happy, the markets are looking good. Regionally, there's some differences. Let me see. Expectations of growth even slow. Okay. Regionally, there are some interesting differences. People living in the East are more likely to expect home prices to rise compared to those in the South and the West, where expectations of price increases have seen the biggest declines. Hot spots, they were hot. COVID, everybody's moving down south because it was relatively cheap. I mean, Nashville is expensive now, but there was a day like you could get some bargains, not so much anymore. This regional variation likely reflects the different market dynamics. You think? Likely? I think so. It's the market dynamics playing out across the country. That's when they say real estate is local, they're not kidding.
Right.
You could, and this isn't a shot, I'm just saying as a segment, you could go to Detroit and get quite a bit of house for not a lot of money, I'm going to leave that there. The implications of these housing market perceptions and the resulting decline in home buying intentions are significant. Almost done. In a bit of catch-22, people see the market as unfavorable. They anticipate prices will mostly stay high or even rise, and as a result, fewer people are planning to buy. This could potentially lead to more stagnant market in the long run. What do you think about that?
Well, the first, I think it is alarming to hear 68% of renters, or feel like it's getting out of reach. So that's not good. Overall in the article, and even though they're projecting, but I think we might be seeing some price declines around, 33 of the major cities. That's what I look at as major cities, like um, 32 or whatever out of the 100 had seen some small price declines or whatever. So that's, that's nothing to shake a stick at, right? I mean, that could be our city could be in there, which we've historically seen very positive, small gains over the last few years. But even if it flattened out, it definitely would help some affordability issues if the home prices flattened out for a little bit, didn't see very much or any gain at all, and then we get some help with our interest rates. So to answer Angie's question, I think they're going to the next 2 to 3 months probably, just because we're at a really good high right now. We're still close to 7%, which that's, in my opinion, comes close to shutting things down. Um, so we're closer to 7. And then, it was kind of like we didn't think Fed was going to cut the rates, but it's probably predicted next time that they cut the rates.
Yeah.
Um, we're getting some movement in the tariff situation. Looks like China's come to some agreement today. And who agrees with China? I mean, like, if you even it's a miracle to have an agreement with China in the first place. Like, they're China. Like, you're not. We're Americans. It's like the exact opposite. But anyways, it's the UK deal. I think the tariffs, once that stuff kind of settles itself and a couple more deals go into place, we could see a dramatic
Yep.
shift in rates.
Sorry, a little break up there. I think, and the reason we haven't been talking about rates too much in the last, I don't know, little bit, is the rates have been shifting just by like basis points. It's like 688 and 691, and then the next day it'll be 682. And I mean, it's just almost flat. You'd have to really be exaggerated to get a graph to look like it's moving, when it comes to prices and stuff. Can you hear me, Rodney?
Yeah, I can. Rates have just been just volatile. I mean, it's just it seems like every movement in the world makes our rates worse. So it's been difficult for them to come down. Like, everything that happens affects them and makes them go the other way.
Right, and we'll just touch on this before we move on to Rodney's riff, and that was, and Rodney brought that up already. There was another pause in the Fed interest rates and the article says another pause in Fed interest rates may disappoint buyers. The one thing that this article said that really blends well with what we're talking about so far was that home buyers, and I'll kind of bring this up because I just thought it was kind of interesting, that home buyers are paying close attention to the Fed moves interest rates and mortgage rates. And that's what kind of my point is about the market and the volatility and lack of confidence a little bit. Because if everybody's watching those basis point movements in interest, I mean, the difference in your monthly, if it was 688 versus 682, I'm going to guess is probably minimal. Would I be right?
Yes, it's it means a lot less after people, kind of get into their house. Like, if you ask most people what their interest rates are, they're going to know about what it's at, but they usually forget exactly what it is.
Ask me about it. So Here we go. We're going to move on to Rodney's Riff. Oh, yeah.
All right.
Okay.
That's the Riff.
There we go.
All right. We got a pretty good article for you today. I'll just jump in here. What would you do? Pay off your mortgage or invest $450,000 in inheritance? A couple or a couple was getting about $450,000, trying to decide what to do with it, and they put it out on Reddit, and they would love to get your thoughts. So you know what that means. You're gonna get some good stuff here. Give you a little background of the story. They owe about 426,000 on a 4.2% variable rate. They have about 35,000 total in student loans. They've got a funded emergency fund. So we're assuming 6 or 9 months of bills, things like that. They make he's the only one working, makes 90,000 now, and wife will graduate soon and should add another 60K. Half of his monthly income goes towards their mortgage. They're married and have no kids. Leaning towards paying off the debts and aggressively investing. They understand that the long term usually outpaces the 4.2%, meaning if they invested it, they'd probably end up with more money. But mortgage free is appealing. What would you do? And wow, did this spark some conversation here. First, I'm not a financial planner at all, but here's the advice that I would give. Here's the way I see it. The first thing I would do is I'd save it all. It's absolutely rare that you get a $400,000 head start on a savings plan. The 400,000, thinking about that, the 400 could be massive if you could save this till retirement age. And plus, having a large savings account should give you a peace of mind as well. Like not having a mortgage gives you a peace of mind. Having enough to pay that mortgage, it would also provide me a good peace of mind there. The home you're probably in is your first house, so you're probably going to outgrow that home, and then when you do, you're not going to be mortgage free anymore. You're probably going to move up, and then you're going to have a paid off house, which would be substantially, paying off almost all of your new one. But now you're going to have a mortgage anyways, and that was the whole thing. So you're young right now and no kids, and once you outgrow it, you're probably going to have a mortgage some point in your future. So at that point, your money's no longer making money; it's just equity. Another factor is when the spouse graduates and is making money, your bills will feel a lot better. Like you're going to get he's making 90 now, they're going to go to 150 if she makes 60. That's going to be a huge increase. So the bill aspect should be, in my opinion, okay. It should be giving you a cash infusion or however you want. It's going to be a lot easier for you. My experience, people find ways to spend their money instead of investing, especially once you get children. It seems to, you want to do the best for your kids. You end up spending more Christmas and birthdays and all that stuff. So, and I look at like if the 400,000 was to double every 10 years, and I think there's some kind of rule about your money may double every 7 years, but I'm just saying if it doubles every 10 years, you'd end up having 3.2 million in 30 years versus just paying off 400,000 now on your mortgage. Because I don't get the side of mortgage free if you have the cash on hand of earning that is sitting there earning a higher rate than your mortgage is. Meaning if you got a big pile of cash, I wouldn't be stressed out about having a mortgage because if something were to ever happen, you could pay it off if that was a situation you got in. I always feel like cash is king The more you have is the better off you are. You can, even later on in life, you could borrow against it. You wouldn't ever have to go to the bank. You could borrow against it for car loans and things. So there's a lot of things you could do there. But when you put it in equity, you've kind of put that money to sleep, and it's not a bad thing. It's just, equity is equity and cash is cash. You don't have any kind of flexibility with equity, not much. So wanted to jump into the comments. One of the comments said Donald Trump believes he is invincible. Now, it has nothing to do with the conversation or anything. I just thought that was funny that they would. That was the very first mention that Donald Trump thinks he's invisible or invincible. So there's that.
Those could both be true, actually.
Yes. Another I would 100% pay off my mortgage and be done with it. I know people without a mortgage, is truly life changing, the freedom you have for your cash flow without hanging over your head. Hate your job, no problem. Find another. Lost your job, no problem. Want to invest more, no problem. Want to play more, no problem. 100% mortgage payout for me. Penalties be damned. So I don't live like that. That is not good advice, in my opinion. Like, hate your job? Well, no problem. Just quit and find another one. Well, live off your savings. You really don't want to do that. Like, if living that kind of lifestyle, at least about your job and things like that. That's not going to get you ahead, in my opinion. Here's another one that said, this is what I did. Haven't had a mortgage in 8 years, and it's been amazing for all the reasons you point out. It may not be optimal, but it takes a lot of stress off your plate, which means quality of life goes up a bit. Like I said, people who do this even understand it's not a good financial move, but they continue to do it for this. Takes a lot of stress off your plate. Quality of life. I don't get it. Pay your mortgage. You've got the cash to pay it off if something were to happen, and it's growing. Here's another 1,000%. If you could have $2,400 a month payment, I'd be extremely happy. While I can afford it, this is what I've been doing. Went from $600K to $300K in 5 years. That's what he owes. So instead of investing that $300 in 5 years, and it possibly is, 50% more, he's got it in equity. Again, I think if you had a financial planner and they was on here saying that you had 300,000, they wouldn't be putting it in equity there. I find the interest earned on passive investments, which is historically 2 times their mortgage interest rate, far more life-changing. I thought the whole concept of this sub is to try to distance emotion from investing. Objectively, index funds blow paying off a mortgage out of the water. Yes, it's always suggested to pay off the mortgage, yet it is always suggested to pay off the mortgage on these posts. We've just advertised such the mortgage ends when we plan to retire. When compounding interest, we will be worlds ahead than if we had paid it off. Meaning they believe like me. Like they would rather take their cash, line up your mortgage when you're, planning on retiring. I agree with that. Have it paid off before retirement. Get a shorter term, but don't sink all your money in there. And in this case, the guy's making 90,000. He may never have another opportunity to get 400,000 at one time. Like that you could really do. It's a life-changing savings amount if you put it in there and save it. A lot of people here seem to think short-term or value their mental health above long-term wealth or financial success. It is fine if you can't handle having a loan, but if you're someone who isn't bothered by that and and likes to think logically, investing the money is not just nice, it's life changing and can lead to millions of dollars later in life, opposed to no savings, investments, and a paid off home. It's a no brainer if you look at the numbers. And that's kind of the thing I'm at, is like I really would recommend saving the money versus taking all of that money and spending it at one time. You're just not going to have that opportunity anymore, or much in your lifetime, to start your savings off with that. So
Interesting.
that's my riff.
That's
Andy,
a
what do you
good.
think?
That's a daggone good riff, man. Now, Angie had a really good question. I bet she could use an answer on this one. And I think you just gave the answer, but go ahead.
I was planning on paying my next house off and investing the rest. You don't think it's a good idea? Well, one, I would want to. I don't know exactly know the age of Angie. Like this was a very young couple, and what I was saying, what I didn't like, or what I think would happen if you take a young couple right now and say you got no mortgage, but you got 400,000. Um, you know, they're going to get a mortgage. Uh, 3 years later, they're going to go buy the 750 house. Their house may be worth 500 now, and so they're going to have a 250 mortgage plus taxes and insurance, and so they're just going to be there, and then no savings. So I would rather go and have a more modest, a 20% down payment, and still have 400,000 that's earning 30 or 40,000 every year. I mean, even if they spent the interest that the money earned is one thing, you would still have that 400,000. But like I said, I would think it's going to be worth millions at the time their mortgages are paid off. And plus, for a young person to go and say, they need a mortgage, right? They don't need to be mortgage free and just spend their money on coffees and movies. Um, I would suggest them now, if you're Angie's lived a long time in California, moving to Chattanooga, maybe a mortgage free, depending on your age, is appropriate. But financially, I would always take a mortgage and keep my cash separate. Like that's just, I mean, cash is king. You can always pay off your house later with it if you're earning money. But if at some point you're going to retire, and you probably don't want, you're not going to want to try to hustle that money and make, an extra 2% or whatever you're trying to make on it. So, at that point, you need to worry about your lifestyle. So,
And she's also mentioned that she's got an inheritance that will be available to invest as well, which is that's really good for you. Now, I will say that if Dave Ramsey were dead, he'd be turning over in his grave right about now.
yeah, but if you listen to, Dave Ramsey is, he's, I don't want to even talk about his money. I've seen that building he built. I think he paid cash for it. Who knows?
Yeah.
But he won't. He where I disagree with him is, I think it's better for people with not a lot of means to plant their flag and buy a house at 100% versus wait until you get 10 or 20% down. I've had a lot of single parents. I've helped a lot of families get into a house with little or no money down, and it was a fantastic investment for them. I mean, it's life changing for them. So I've seen that too many times to agree with him on that. Plus, I've also seen that guy at house auctions before he was a zillionaire, trying to buy these at 100% himself before he filed bankruptcy a couple times. So, or at least once. I mean,
It's the God's honest truth. Yep.
I mean, I remember this dude showing up in I think he was driving a Mercedes or something, had a trench coat on. He even had tried to have long hair and he was half bald headed. Um, but I don't want to, the guy's a genius when he comes to helping people with their finances. But I disagree with him with the help that I feel like I've helped some families on the other end of the spectrum there.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's popular, so
Unbelievable. Yeah, I mean he's known worldwide. I mean he's crazy how big that dude is.
Yeah, but I used to, and I'm going to close a couple of tabs, and that's where the glitchiness comes from. So if that glitches, Rodney will be back. It just it presses my CPU a little bit. The company I used to work with, we were focused on Dave Ramsey people. And one of the thing about Dave Ramsey people is they'd be debt free. It means that and it was particularly problematic for lenders because they wouldn't have a credit score because they'd be debt free. They didn't, and that was a whole different.
I mean, had an envelope system. Yeah, they'd have an envelope system.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, he has his followers, and if they, if people do 10% or 50% of the stuff he does, they're so much better off, right? I mean, like I said, he does especially credit cards and that stuff. He is on the point about that stuff. As a mortgage lender, of course, I'm going to disagree with some of the stuff he says.
Yeah, well, and that's all right. But I just wanted to mention that even that style, even that lifestyle in the real estate business comes with its issues. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That was a great riff. That was great show. To move past that, what I want to talk about, since we're at the people are uncertain about the market, buyers aren't out there buying. And then the biggest topic is affordability and pricing. And that's what I want to kind of touch on for the balance of the show. And here's what I want to get at. We talked about a particular subdivision here it's a very popular subdivision, and it's loading up with, and this is May, so we're stroking now in terms of listings. This is when, that's probably, we're a month into it, when the most listings come on the market to the end of May, beginning of June, and then it'll start to tail off. At least that's what's done historically that I'm familiar with. But affordability, when we're talking about tariffs and we're talking about interest rates and we're talking about all that kind of stuff, that's when we're trying to get somebody to be able to buy a house because the interest rate's a little bit lower. And then people will talk about home prices, just like Angie was, and rightfully said, we got a downvote for prices. People want prices to be able to moderate a little bit. I'm going to say something really controversial here. All of the houses that are currently on the market, if they were priced right, every single one of them would sell. Every single one of them. That's just, it sounds crazy, but people are pretty smart. And when they go out and look at a house, whether it's a condition, whatever the situation is, if a home is overpriced, it's just not going to sell until it gets priced right. And so one of the things where adjustments have been made is on new home prices. And the reason is, this is just my opinion, that home builders look at houses more like a commodity than a home seller does. Would you agree with that, Rodney?
Sure. Yes. I mean, it's a product for them. Yeah. It's not they're not emotionally attached at all to those properties.
Mm-mm. And so in order to get them to move, they'll lower the price. So the prices of new homes fell in nearly a third of major metro areas during the past year, giving some hope to families who worry about the housing market is too expensive for them. Those are that's one group category that can be pretty flexible. The company's it's Realtor.com, the company's new construction quarterly report found that median list prices for newly built homes in the first quarter of 2025 was 448, down 0.3 from the first quarter of 24 and 1.3 from the first quarter of 2023. Nationally, 32 of the top 100 metropolitan areas saw declining new home prices. So if you're in the market for a house, existing is an option, but new homes may be a good qualifier, may be a good option for you, because what they're going to do, because it says right here, the price reductions for newly built homes contradicts what's happening to existing homes, which saw a price increase of 1.4% in the past year and 5.1% in the first quarter of 2023. That's exactly what I'm talking about. People overprice their homes because they're still sort of living in the past a little bit. And if I have a house to sell, I want to believe that it's worth at the very tippy top of the market. That's what I want to do. And if I list it that way, I resist wanting to lower the price, because I've got in my head when I did that initial listing that I'm going to recover those dollars. I've got a dollar amount in my head. When we have to go in and start reducing the price, it's deflating, because all of a sudden, I'm not getting a new car or whatever, that kind of a thing. But the reason I brought this up is that builders are able to deliver smaller homes at lower prices, and often offering financial incentives that makes monthly payments more manageable. We were talking about that last year, that what builders are going to do, this is the market forces at work, what they're going to do is build smaller homes. These aren't tiny homes, they're just smaller homes at less expense so people can afford them. I mean, new builds have a real opportunity to create some housing for people, wouldn't you think, for some affordability?
Yes, that's been the biggest part. New construction and first time home buyers have probably been, I think it's high 70% of all business. So yes, I think and those two marrying each other are exactly what we need.
And okay, so that brings us back to houses getting cheaper. I think realistic pricing is more what I would lobby for, because this is a really good question. How do you know you're not underpricing just because buyers are scared? Do you have any thoughts on this before I?
No, I'm gonna let you handle this one. This is yours.
Okay. This is just one man's opinion, and I've sold a lot of houses, and I've watched Terry DeSalms, who was, if you wanted an education on how to sell a house, Terry DeSalms is the guy. Here's his rule: your house compared to your neighborhood needs to be in a little better condition at a slightly lower price. Period. That's going to get it sold. And I saw that repeated hundreds of times per year. That simple principle. So how do you know you're not underpricing it just because the buyers are scared? I'm not quite sure what, just because the buyers are scared. Here's how you price. This is my opinion. If you go into your neighborhood, I get the whole market thing, but wouldn't it be better to wait then? For the market to recover? Can you help me interpret this, Rodney?
Yeah, if right now, if the market's declining, like 32 or out of the 100 cities, would it be better to wait? I mean,
yes.
I mean, it could be. I mean, we're getting at the point to where you're saying yes right now for the first time in maybe since, what is it, 2003 or 2006, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's been almost 19 years since the answer's been yes, but in 32 of those cities, it may be yes if you didn't have to move, right?
Right.
In say in Angie's situation, it may be a yes because she don't have to. She can wait out. She can try, she can wait out any kind of down because you do know that that's not going to last more than a few years.
Plus, in the short term, instead of lowering, that wait until the market goes higher. Well, okay. As we said at the Realtor.com, or they've done some numbers and what their expectations is for this next year. Now, this is generally speaking. Your local market may be different, so take that into account. But they're suggesting that home prices will increase during the course of the next year 0.5%. 0.5%. And if that sticks, if you waited 6 months and it went up 0.3%, there's like no return on that. I mean, essentially zero. In my opinion, just my opinion, in order for a house to catch the most dollars, period, what you have to do is make it move-in ready. And you've heard me say this before, make the house move-in ready. Curb appeal has to be pristine. And then what you're going to find is, here's how the rule of thumb with house pricing is, again, in one man's opinion, and it's worked very well. I've never failed at it. If you price a home and nobody comes in the first, call it, week, it's way too high. If you price a home and people come to see it, call it a trickle, because these days, it used to be people would line up to see houses. That doesn't seem to happen so much anymore. But if you price a home and people come to see it, but you're not getting offers, it's just a little bit too high. This is Terry DeSelms. This is bang that into my brain. It's just a little bit too high. Now, what does a little bit mean? If it's a $500,000 house, if you lower a house price $5,000, what does that mean to a buyer? Nothing. It means nothing, because they would have offered that less anyway if they wanted the house. So it's got to be a little more substantial, in my opinion, than that 5. When you price a home correctly, the market is brilliant at self-balancing. Let's say here's the thing that scares people the most. What if I price it too low? That's virtually impossible. I'm not saying it will never happen. Depends on the house, case by case. But if you're in a good neighborhood with a good house and it's priced low, what's going to happen? It's going to force multiple offers, and all of a sudden your sale price is going to go up because you're going to have buyers competing with one another. So pricing too low is self-balancing, and you get kind of protected that way. You just have to kind of believe in the process. Does that make sense, Rodney?
It does. It does.
So in terms of, instead of lower and wait until the market goes higher again, in this particular market with the 0.5% lift in the next year, I don't see there's no reason to do that. I mean, you won't gain anything. There's just not enough return. If it was 3 years ago, waiting 6 months, around here you could be $20,000.
And the place she's moving to's
Chattanooga.
Yeah, she says it's declining as well. So, I mean, I don't know much about the Chattanooga area. Our top producer's from Chattanooga.
Oh, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the bottom line on that is, when you get ready to go there, look for a property has high days on or higher days on market, and then the seller is more than likely kind of sick of being on the market for a period of time, and they'll negotiate if it's high days on market. There's 2 scenarios on high days on market. I'll drop it. Sometimes houses are priced high because the seller has to recover X amount of dollars regardless of what happens. And you'll try to bargain with them or try to negotiate, and they just won't budge. And the reason is they can't budge. They can't. There could be HELOC. It could be any number of reasons why they couldn't. Then there's the other type of seller that's just keeping the price high. We're just going to test the waters. And here's what they say around here: somebody will come in from California and give me my price. No, they won't. Used to. That used to be true. But for those, you can negotiate and get a better price. That's high days on market. People make the mistake of trying to bid on a house the first day it goes on the market. That's what it's going to be at its highest price, period. Just, that's my take on that. Okay. I think I'm worn out. That was good. All right. I think we're done for the day. Angie, I guess. Let's see what she's got to say here. I guess it depends on if the prices are lower where you want to move to. Correct. Seems like prices are decreasing in Chattanooga area. What I've been dealing with this might be your situation exactly. In Nashville for years, what it was, and it's still the case. Somebody would have, and I'm going to kind of make up numbers a little bit, but somebody would have what I consider a bungalow, 1,700 square foot home that was, you got it. What used to be the case, and still is, that people, and I have real world examples of this. There was a guy that came into Nashville, nice guy. He was a music producer, and he had I call it a bungalow. He called it a bungalow. It was 1,700 square feet. And it was brightly colored. He showed me pictures of it. And it was like 3 blocks from the beach. And when they bought it 10 years ago, I don't know whatever they paid for it. But when he went to sell it, it was like $1.8 million. It was 3 blocks from the beach. And I say a bungalow, I mean 1,700 square feet. And he comes whooshing into town and buys down in Franklin, new construction, $900,000 cash. And banks the difference, I mean, when people are, kind of angry with California, that did happen. I'm just telling you that it did happen, people could live high on the hog, but they are the one regret that I will always say, I wish I could bring the ocean with me. I mean, I heard that almost 100% from Californians, because if it was different, I'd live in California if I could. I would. Truth. I'm telling you. But anyway, that's the way it was. And maybe your situation will be like that. That'd be a cool move, man. That'd be cool. Rodney, that riff was really good, man. That was you're my hero. That was really good. Angie, I can't thank you enough. You are the nicest. It's so pleasant to see your name pop up there. Well, I get angry. Sellers don't have to jack the prices up. Yeah, I get it. I get it. All right. Well, we'll see you next Tuesday. Any final thoughts there, Rodney? I probably asked you that.
No, great article today. Great.
That was good stuff. We will all see you next. Say that again.
I said, thanks, Ange.
And we only had one tiny little glitch, so I'm going to take that away as a win. And see you, Rodney. See you, buddy.
See you.